Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our weekly Quantum Sparks class. This week, we're going to talk about the chunking method: simplify, systemize, and scale. So from the beginning of our lives, chunking has been the way that humans learn. We don't start out reading Shakespeare. We start with the alphabet. From there, letters combine into words, words become sentences, sentences become stories, and stories become comprehension. Everything we know, from language to math to mastering our careers, has come to us in chunks. This isn't about learning, it's about survival in today's world. From the moment we wake up in the morning to the moment we go to sleep, we are bombarded. Emails, texts, social media, news, client demands. Our minds are constantly pulled in a dozen directions. In this kind of environment, the only way to learn anything new, the only way to accomplish anything meaningful, and the only way to grow a business is to master the art of chunking. Chunking is about breaking things down into bite-sized, manageable pieces that allow comprehension and execution to just expand naturally. It's also about energy flow, because just like the brain can't process unlimited raw data at once, energy can't absorb, process, and transmit everything at once either. Chunking lets us direct our energy in focused bursts, creating clarity, momentum, and ultimately mastery. In this program, we're going to explore chunking not just as a memory trick, but as a business system. We'll look at how to chunk your schedule, your presentations, your conversations, your marketing, your education. In short, you're going to chunk your entire business, because when you chunk correctly, everything becomes scalable, sustainable, and infinitely more powerful. So welcome to today's Quantum Sparks on the chunking method: simplify, systematize, and scale. As always, knowledge is only potential. So while we super appreciate that you're here for our weekly Quantum Sparks class, we want you to get the most out of it. And the way to get the most out of it is to execute. Take little tidbits of what you learned today, write it down, and then execute, put it into action. The quote to start this program this week is: "Great things are not done by impulse, but by a series of small things brought together," by the famous artist Vincent van Gogh. So one of the great things about learning how to focus on chunking is it allows you to scale. Scaling isn't about working harder, it's about structuring small, repeatable pieces into a system. And that's what chunking is. Chunking is about figuring out what you can clump together, the things that you can get done, because then you can scale those items. So what is chunking? It's just grouping information or actions into manageable pieces. Just like we said, when we're learning how to read, we start with a letter, then we turn the letter into a word, then we turn the word into a sentence, and then the sentence into paragraphs and into complete stories. That entire process is chunking. Same is true with many of the things that we're exposed to regularly. The reason why we can remember phone numbers so easily is because we chunk them. We can remember our social security numbers because we chunk them. Business is no different. Chunking prevents us from overwhelm. Now, without chunking, there's chaos, stress, and burnout. With chunking, we are able to create systems, clarity, and repeatable success. So scaling is impossible without first chunking things into something that can be scaled. So today we're going to talk about chunking, and we're going to apply it to some specific areas of a real estate business, from scheduling to listing presentations, buyer presentations, appointments and conversations, education and training, marketing. Each area can be chunked into its essential smaller pieces. In fact, when you look at high performing real estate agents, you can almost tell what areas they are really good at chunking in. Now, let's talk about the science behind chunking. First, there was a scientist in, I believe, the 1950s who created a theory. It was called cognitive load theory. And basically, what cognitive load theory is saying is that we can only hold between 5 to 9 items in our head at one time. So, with that, we need to chunk things down into packets of information so that instead of memorizing hundreds of things, we can break hundreds of items down into 5 to 9 items that we can hold. So, without the ability to chunk, we would just be drowned in details. And when we're drowned in the details, we can't make sense of it. Secondly, chunking also has to do with pattern recognition. So our brains are naturally set up to look for structure and patterns. Chunking transforms scattered data into meaningful patterns. So in business, this means that we can take lots of information and lots of things that we need to do for our business and turn them into chunks that we can then create repeatable templates with. The universe chunks everywhere we look, from alphabet words to sentences to books. Growing up, we start to crawl, then we walk, then we run. Comprehension grows only in chunks. So everything around us, we as humans develop in chunks. We get just enough to get to the next point. And once we get to that point, now we can gather the chunks to get to the next point. Chunking expands comprehension. So each chunk prepares you for the next. So when scaling business, it's all about layering chunks until mastery. So this is how some agents are able to go from, say, $3 million a year in production to $30 million a year in production. They are doing essentially the same things they were doing as a $3 million producer, but they've chunked packets and pockets of information together. They've chunked together systems so that they could scale their business. That's the beauty of chunking. Chunking makes life efficient, it makes business scalable. Chunking also frees working memory. Think about all the things that come at us in a day, all the distractions that come towards us. By focusing on things that we can chunk, we are able to sift through all the noise that's coming in simultaneously. We free up our working memory so we can just work on the things that matter in the moment. Systems, which are available to us once we can chunk information together, the systems make our business lighter, repeatable, and scalable. By the way, chunking has to do with energy too. Many of the Quantum Sparks classes, we talk about the fact that we are transmitters and receivers of energy. Well, we chunk information when we're receiving and transmitting energy as well. Think of conversations that you have. And all of us have done this. So we're receiving energy when we have a conversation. We're transmitting energy when we are having conversation. But how many times have you left a conversation and a few days later, your mind picks up something else? In other words, you don't necessarily absorb everything all at once. Your mind chunks together the information. It chunks together tone, body language, and words into meaning, and it can come to you in waves. Life experiences also come at us in chunks. So how many times have you had to see the same lesson? You're like, holy cow, this keeps happening to me. This same lesson keeps coming back to me. The universe delivers things in pieces because we are able to adapt in pieces. We are ready for the lessons in small bites. so that we can grow without being overwhelmed with looking at the full picture, but little bite-sized pieces of the picture. Without chunking, energy would just flood us, and it would cause us burnout and confusion if we tried to take in all the energy at once. Well, the same is true with transmitting energy. Whoops, skipping a transmitting energy. So when you transmit energy, think of it like your consults, your client appointments, the conversations you have. Your effectiveness when it comes to consulting your clients has a lot to do with your ability to chunk information into meaning, to chunk information into digestible pieces, just as the universe does for us, we do for our clients. We're going to chunk things down. Our listing presentation, our buyer presentation, we're going to chunk everything into meaning for our clients. So instead of blasting raw energy out, blasting out to our clients and the people around us everything they need to know about the home buying process, the home selling process, we're going to organize it into pockets, chunks of information that makes it digestible so that it creates clarity in the communications. Chunking creates resonance. So every chunk of energy we receive or transmit builds on the previous chunk of energy. So just like chunking applied to learning the alphabet, which then can be turned into a word that then can be turned into a sentence, this is how we receive and transmit energy as well. The energy builds off the energy of the last chunk received. This is how frequency expands from small insights to much larger awareness, from tiny actions to quantum shifts. Chunking ensures our energy transmission matches the receiver's capacity, allowing resonance to grow, our ability to align with the information we're receiving to grow. So chunking is the great regulator. It is the universe's way of regulating energy flow, ensuring that humans can receive, process, and transmit energy in pieces that are small enough to comprehend, yet powerful enough to expand. So let's talk about different ways we can use chunking in our business. So you look at any highly successful real estate agent, and I guarantee you they're chunking their schedule. So by chunking a schedule, you turn chaos into order. Instead of reacting to your schedule, it is ordered. When you have no order to your schedule and how you take appointments, for example, you're going to miss opportunities. When you have order, the order itself structures free time. So chunk your day. These are just some ideas on how to potentially chunk your calendar. Chunk your day into 3 to 4 priorities maximum. So maybe you chunk it into sections like lead gen for one chunk, client work for another chunk, follow-ups. These are like different ways to chunk your calendar throughout the day to say, okay, I'm going to have 2 hours for lead generation. And then after the 2 hours, I will take a break. And then I'm going to have another 2 hours that's just for my follow-ups. Success equals consistency, not randomness. So creating some sort of consistent chunking within your schedule is going to create order. You can also chunk your schedule monthly and yearly. So we talked about chunking daily so that each day looks similar to the day before, just not the actual work that's being done, but the work that falls within a group. So the chunking is saying, okay, the lead generation is going to be for 2 hours. Well, also you can chunk your monthly and yearly calendars the same way by focusing on your annual goals and then turning the systems, the items you have to do to achieve those annual goals, into chunking in your monthly calendar. So for example, if you want to do 24 transactions a year, that equals 2 transactions a month, which means perhaps 2 appointments a week. So scaling is just stacking your chunks together. By the way, I want to put a plug in for our Algorand book, because Algorand is all about chunking. So that is why in the Algorand program, it is so simple. It's 7 checklists, but you'll see that the checklists are broken down into 9 steps. We chunk everything down into its simplicity so that you can scale a business. Let's talk about chunking your listing presentation. Again, when we're sitting with buyers and sellers, we're delivering our energy. And through that, in order for the consumer, the person we're sitting with, to be able to comprehend what we are articulating to them, we need to chunk things down so that they're easier to grasp, they're easier to digest, so that it's easier for us to create clarity in the chaos of the listing presentation and the chaos of doing a real estate transaction. So when I say that the real estate transaction is chaos, this is in the eyes of the consumer who doesn't know all the ins and outs, all the steps involved with doing a real estate transaction. We know all the ins and outs, but our job is to create clarity for the client. So in our listing presentation, we're going to chunk our listing presentation down into just 4 sections. Number 1, we're going to have chunk 1, the value proposition, who you are and why you do what you do. In other words, the first chunk of the listing presentation is to create comfort, to let the consumer know that they're in really good hands. Chunk 2, we're going to talk about the bigger picture. We're going to talk about market dynamics to show that we understand the current landscape. So here's where we talk about what's happening in the market right now. Then we have chunk 3, pricing data, the numbers that matter. Chunk 3 of the listing presentation is all about sharing the CMA comps, pricing strategy, maybe going through a potential net sheet. But this part of the listing presentation is about showing the consumer how you're going to help them price strategically, not emotionally. And then chunk 4, your marketing plan, will be a 4th chunk of your listing presentation. Now, these are not set in stone. You can create your own chunks, but the important piece is to create it into 4 sections so it's understandable, where the articulation itself, which is the chunking, the delivery method to the consumer, makes it so easy for them to see clearly the process. So chunk 4, the marketing plan. Here's the plan to help the consumer get maximum exposure for the property and top dollar. This structure chunks the conversation into digestible pieces while also aligning with how clients naturally think. We're going through why you, next, what's happening, next, what's my home worth, and then 4th, how you're going to sell it. Next, you want to also chunk your buyer presentation. Same exact thing. You decide how many chunks you want, but think about maybe chunk 1 again is your value proposition, who you are and why you do what you do. This way the consumer feels comfortable that you're in the position to be their expert. Chunk 2, we're going to go through the buyer's needs and goals. This is where you do your discovery, make it about them, and ask and listen about budget, location, home features, clarify their wants and needs, identify things that might be deal breakers. But this chunk is about aligning, helping the customer understand what matters most to them so that you can understand what matters most to them. Chunk 3, the home search process. here's where we're going to simplify the journey. Talk about touring and how to handle off market, what to do when they want to go to open houses. Chunk 3 is about making sure that the customer doesn't feel lost when they're searching for a house. Chunk 4, offer and negotiation. This is where you're going to talk about the offer process and how you're going to help position them to win the property that they want. And then chunk 5, and this one's about closing and beyond. It's showing that they're more than just a client, they're with you for life. You're going to explain transaction timelines from the moment the offer is accepted to inspection to financing to closing. But also you're going to talk about all the things you'll do after closing, such as vendor referrals and offering home ownership resources and staying in touch. Again, you don't have to go with these particular chunks of the presentation, but your buyer presentation and your listing presentation will be received easier and faster by chunking. So by chunking, you're answering the buyer's main questions. Am I working with the right agent? Will the process be clear to me? And can I get the property that I want? Let's talk about chunking your appointments and conversations in general. So with an appointment with a new client, you want to build rapport, understand their needs, offer solutions, and close. 4 chunks. There's always the same flow for a new customer. So think about how you can pre-chunk questions, maybe 5 to 6 questions you ask every client every time. Keep your process consistent so that you're not just winging it, that you're gathering information in a pre-chunked format. By the way, chunking is really important when it comes to learning. So we're all bombarded with training opportunities in our business, from continuing education classes to classes just in general in the marketplace for real estate agents. Well, you can't learn everything at once. So don't even try to just hop on everything. Chunk a system for yourself on how to incorporate new skills into your life and your business. Trying to learn everything will create burnout, but if you can create chunks, like learn a little bit at a time, you can create mastery. So for example, these micro classes, it doesn't have to be a long class to take something new into your business. So look for little 30-minute training sessions where you get one new skill per session. By doing that, over 52 weeks, you have taken on 52 new skills. Imagine what kind of growth that is over a 5-year period. You can also chunk your marketing. So when it comes to marketing, this is why the Algorand program is important too, because we help you chunk your marketing into bite-sized pieces. Because marketing in real estate can be overwhelming. We've got social media, mailers, pop-bys, emails, events. It will be too much. In fact, the overwhelm in and of itself eliminates people from our business because there's too much to know what to do at any particular moment. So you can chunk this down so that you say, okay, I'm going to concentrate on 5 chunks of marketing: my sphere, farm, digital, such as social media, and then events and pop-bys. Chunking creates order out of the chaos of all the marketing that is available. So within each pillar, for example, your sphere, then chunk out what you're going to do throughout a 12-month period. Maybe for your sphere, you're going to do a quarterly newsletter, 2 touches a month, maybe like an email, or your fellow, if you're a LAER agent, your fellow CRM system, or creating birthday touches throughout the year. Make something that's just repeatable. Chunk it down into something so simple that anybody could carry it out for you. Use templates and systems. So we have lots of options in our business, from Zara, CRM. Use use things that help you automate the chunks. When you design something, think of how you can apply that design to the other marketing chunks. So maybe you create your system, you chunk out everything you're going to do within a 12-month period just for your sphere of influence. And once you do that and you've created your design/template, then use the same exact design/template and use that for your farming or for your past client follow-ups. So create first the big chunks and then create your systems that align with it. Chunk tasks into steps. So for example, your listing launch checklist, 10 steps. By the way, we have it all in the Algorand system. The Algorand system is all about chunking. Chunking your listing presentation, chunking your schedule, your yearly, monthly, weekly schedule, chunking your listing appointment, chunking your buyer appointment, chunking your new listing once you have the listing, and then chunking your events. Because by having these systems in place, all of your work becomes duplicatable. When your work is chunked, it's also so much easier for someone else to take over. It no longer is just dependent on you. Once you have created categories for everything, so much easier to have other people step in and help you respond or help you deliver those chunks. So once you have everything chunked, you can then hire assistants, transaction coordinators, marketing staff, etc. So what I want to leave you with is, why do some agents fail? And oftentimes you look in our business and you see real estate agents who seem to do all the right things. They're attending classes, they're like going all in, they're doing all the right things. Where they usually miss the mark is that they're not chunking. They're failing from overwhelm, that they're kind of just doing a little bit of everything, kind of working within the chaos of the raw data of all the things that have to be done to create a successful real estate business. They're working within scattered chaos. Well, then why do some agents succeed? It is because success equals the consistency of systems. Systems equals chunking in action. So the only difference between the agents that succeed and the agents that fail is the ability of the agents that are succeeding to chunk the information into bite-sized pieces, because those bite-sized pieces are what is actionable. Those are the things that they can get done. Those are the little pieces that they can manage within the chaos of our industry and within the chaos of building a business. As Henry Ford said, nothing is particularly hard if you divide things into small jobs. With that, you can always check out all of our previous Quantum Sparks classes at laerrealty.com/Quantum Sparks. And if you ever have anything you want us to cover in a future program, just go to laerrealty.com/ask anything. Thanks, everyone.